Ladies and gentlemen, there are days when the soul feels like it's been walking barefoot across broken glass, when every breath feels heavier than the last, and the thought of tomorrow feels more like a burden than a blessing. Maybe you're there right now. Maybe you've been holding on for so long that your fingers are bleeding from the grip. And maybe you've started to wonder, what's the point? You weren't always like this. There was a time when your heart beat with purpose, when you looked in the mirror and saw someone still in motion. But now, life has worn you down. You've tried, again and again. You gave your best, and it still wasn't enough. And now, you sit in silence, wondering if anyone even notices how tired you are. Let me tell you something that no one else may have said to you. It's okay to feel tired. It's okay to feel lost. It doesn't mean you are weak. It doesn't mean you've failed. It means you've been fighting longer than anyone knows. But here's the truth you've forgotten. The soul does not break. It bends. It stretches. It whispers. But it never breaks. That ache in your chest? That's not defeat. That is your spirit demanding change. That is life knocking at your door, not to punish you, but to wake you up. You see, the ones who are tired of life are often the ones who felt it too deeply. They've loved, trusted, believed, and given everything, only to find disappointment waiting. But those are not signs of weakness. They are signs of courage. The kind of courage that doesn't come with applause, but with scars. You are not broken. You are unfinished. And sometimes the most important thing you can do is pause, not give up. Rest, breathe, stand still in the storm and let it pass. Your story isn't over just because the chapter hurts. You don't have to fix everything today. You just have to choose not to disappear. Disappointment doesn't mean you're done. It means you're human. And life isn't asking you to be perfect. It's asking you to show up again. Even if you show up trembling, there is a version of you, still waiting, who hasn't forgotten how to smile. There is a path forward, quiet but steady, that begins the moment you stop trying to be who you were and start becoming who you were meant to be. So no, this is not the end of your story. This is the part where everything turns. The part where you rise, not with noise, but with truth. Not because everything got easier, but because you got stronger. You've come too far to disappear now. And if no one has told you this today, I see you. I believe in you. And if you've watched this far, it means some part of you still believes too. Don't let go of that part. Feed it. Follow it. Honor it. You're not just a viewer here, you're someone who has survived. So if this touched your heart, stay with me. There's more to be said, more light to be found, more strength to uncover. Like this video, subscribe and join me. Because you're healing your journey, it starts now. And you're not alone. There comes a time in every person's life when the weight they carry becomes too heavy. When waking up feels more like a task than a gift. And each step forward feels like walking through deep mud. If you're feeling that way now, you're not alone. You may have spent days, months, or even years giving your energy, your love, your effort, pouring yourself into your work, your relationships, your responsibilities, trying to do what's right, trying to stay strong. And despite all of that, you're left feeling exhausted. Not just physically tired, but deeply emotionally drained, as though life has slowly emptied the color from your world. You might look around and see people moving forward while you feel stuck in place, and you begin to wonder if you're falling behind, if you're missing something, if maybe you're just not enough. But feeling tired does not mean you've failed. It does not mean you're weak. In fact, it often means the opposite. It means you have been carrying more than others could see. You have been walking through storms in silence. You have faced things without asking for help because you wanted to be strong. You have stayed when others walked away. You have shown up when your mind told you to give in. This kind of exhaustion doesn't come from laziness or carelessness. It comes from courage. It comes from constantly choosing to try when quitting felt easier. It comes from caring so deeply that it wears on your soul. The world does not reward inner battles. It doesn't applaud emotional endurance or mental strength that goes unseen. But those are the quiet victories that matter the most. You might not get a trophy for making it through another hard day. No one may notice the strength it took to get out of bed, to hold your emotions in check, to put on a smile when inside you were breaking. But that doesn't mean your effort is invisible. It doesn't mean your fight is meaningless. Tiredness is a natural result of persistence. When you refuse to give up even when you're hurting, that's not failure. That's a deeper kind of success. That's resilience. That's the spirit refusing to surrender. You didn't reach this point by accident. You got here because you chose to keep going when you could have stopped. That choice, repeated over and over again, creates weariness. But it also builds strength beneath the surface. And sometimes it's not about adding more energy or motivation. It's about understanding why you feel the way you do. When your soul is tired, it's because you've been fighting battles it wasn't prepared for. Life hasn't just been hard, it's been relentless. And you've stood in the middle of it, unprotected, hoping that things would get better soon. You've been patient, hopeful, and enduring. That kind of life weighs on a person. But being tired doesn't mean you're broken. It doesn't mean you're lost beyond repair. It means you've reached a point where your body and mind are begging for space to breathe. It means you've stretched yourself to the limit in pursuit of something meaningful. Maybe love, maybe success, maybe understanding, maybe simply survival. And in all of that striving, you forgot to give yourself the same care you offer everyone else. The world often celebrates toughness, but true strength isn't about pushing through everything without feeling pain. True strength is recognizing when you're exhausted and giving yourself permission to slow down, to recover, to reflect. Because if you don't, the weariness will turn into despair, and that's when you start believing the lie that you're failing. You're not. You're simply worn out from being strong for too long. Pain doesn't always scream, it whispers, and fatigue is often the body's way of telling you something needs to change. You've reached a point where continuing without rest might do more harm than good. And that's not a weakness. That's wisdom. Recognizing the signs, listening to your inner world, honoring your limits. That's the foundation of long-lasting strength. You have nothing to prove to anyone. The fact that you've held on this long is proof enough that you are capable. Now, the question is, can you show the same compassion to yourself that you've shown to the world? There is a quiet strength in those who have suffered in silence. Not the loud, dramatic kind of suffering, but the kind that lives deep inside, where pain echoes softly and no one else hears it but you. That kind of pain doesn't leave visible scars, but it changes the shape of your inner world. It makes the air feel heavier, the days feel longer, and the smallest tasks feel like insurmountable mountains. It's easy in that space to believe that something inside you is broken, that maybe you're just too fragile, too sensitive, too weak to handle life the way others do. But the truth is, your soul has never broken. It has bent, stretched, and cried out in the dark, but it has never shattered. What you feel is not weakness. It is the cost of carrying something too heavy for too long without being seen. Pain is not proof that you are failing. It's a signal, a whisper from within, a reminder that something inside is trying to protect you, trying to awaken you to the parts of your life that are no longer nourishing you. The pressure, the exhaustion, the emotional weight, they are not punishments. They are invitations to pay attention. Most people try to silence those feelings, to distract themselves, to stay busy. But the soul doesn't stop speaking just because you're not listening. It continues to send signs. Anxiety, fatigue, disconnection. And if you ignore it long enough, the soul begins to ache. This ache is not a flaw, it is the beginning of transformation. Because something within you still believes you are meant for more than just survival. That inner voice, even when it's faint, even when it's trembling, still knows that you were not made to suffer endlessly. You were not created to carry everything alone. And that voice becomes louder when the soul is weary, not because you're falling apart, but because life is inviting you to evolve, to shed the skin of who you were taught to be and return to who you really are. You have faced more than most will ever know, and still here you are. That is not by accident. That is a quiet kind of power, a steady kind of resilience, not built on force but on presence, because you kept going when everything in you begged for rest. You kept loving when love was not returned. You kept believing when every door seemed closed. And in doing so, your soul didn't break. It deepened. It stretched to make room for wisdom, for clarity, for a quiet kind of knowing that only pain can teach. The world may not notice this strength, but your spirit does. Your spirit knows the hours you spent holding back tears in silence. It knows the nights you stayed awake wondering if things would ever get better. It knows how many times you wanted to give up but didn't. That kind of knowing cannot be taken from you, cannot be stolen or faked. It becomes a part of you. It becomes your compass. And what is asking to rise in you now is not more force or more effort, but more honesty. To admit that you're tired. To admit that you've been pretending to be okay for far too long. To finally let the soul speak. Because what you resist persists, and what you allow yourself to feel begins to shift. You cannot heal what you won't face. And the longer you deny your pain, the louder it becomes. But if you choose to listen, to truly listen, something incredible happens. You begin to see that your pain has not come to break you. It has come to teach you. It has come to realign you with what matters. It has come to remove what no longer belongs. And in that process, you are not being punished, you are being purified. All the distractions, the noise, the false identities, life is peeling them away. And yes, it hurts. Yes, it feels like loss. But it is also the beginning of remembering. Remembering who you are beneath the pressure, beneath the roles, beneath the expectations. The soul bends because it must adapt. It must adjust to the chaos of the world. But it never breaks. What breaks are the illusions, the false beliefs, the expectations that were never yours to carry. When those fall away, what remains is truth. And truth doesn't always come wrapped in comfort. Sometimes it arrives through heartbreak. Sometimes it comes disguised as silence, as disappointment, as isolation. But it comes. And when it does, everything begins to change. Not outside of you, but within. There are moments when everything inside you begs for an escape. When your thoughts feel too loud, your emotions too overwhelming, and your body too heavy to carry through another day. It's in those moments that the idea of giving up begins to whisper more convincingly than ever before. You look around at your life and wonder how you got here. How something that once had so much potential could feel so empty now. The weight of your responsibilities, the pain of your disappointments, and the silence of unmet expectations start to press in on you. You begin to believe that maybe you failed, that maybe you weren't strong enough, disciplined enough, or smart enough to make it all work. And in that space of deep fatigue, the idea of quitting feels more like relief than defeat. But the truth is, you don't need to give up. You need to rest. You need to breathe. You need to step out of the battle long enough to see that it's not your life that's broken. It's the way you've been forced to carry it. Most people are not tired because they're weak. They're tired because they've spent years pretending to be strong, pretending to be okay, pretending to be unshaken while the storm raged inside them. And that pretending takes its toll. It creates a quiet erosion of the spirit. The kind that doesn't show up all at once, but slowly over time until you no longer recognize the person you see in the mirror. You are not alone in feeling this way. Many carry this same exhaustion. It's the exhaustion of always putting others first, of keeping your pain silent so others can stay comfortable, of trying to meet the standards set by a world that never really saw you. It's not the tasks themselves that tire you out. It's the emotional weight of constantly having to hide your truth. When the soul is silenced for too long, it begins to ache, starts to scream through anxiety, depression, disconnection, and fatigue. And we call it failure. But it's not failure. It's the spirit calling you back to yourself. You were not designed to be endlessly productive. You were not meant to keep running without pause, without reflection, without stillness. There is no shame in needing to slow down. There is no weakness in needing rest. The strongest among us are not those who push through everything. They are the ones who know when to stop, when to recover, and when to listen to the deeper voice within. That voice is still there. Beneath the noise, beneath the pressure, beneath the guilt of not being enough. That voice is quiet, but it's honest. And it's telling you that you don't need to disappear. You need to come home to yourself. Coming home to yourself doesn't mean fixing everything. It doesn't mean solving all your problems in one night. It means recognizing that you've been carrying too much alone for too long. It means allowing yourself to pause without guilt. To say, I'm tired without apology. to acknowledge your limits without believing they define you. Rest is not the opposite of progress. It is part of it. Just like nature rests in winter, just like the body heals in sleep, your spirit needs time to repair, to gather itself again, to return to clarity. We live in a world that glorifies constant motion, that praises those who never stop, who never admit weakness, who never say no. But this way of living is not sustainable. It leads to burnout, to bitterness, to emptiness. And you were not created to live like that. You were created to feel, to breathe, to move in rhythm with your truth, not against it. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is to stop. Not because you're giving up, but because you're choosing to return to balance. Because you finally understand that pushing through isn't always noble. Sometimes it's a form of self-abandonment. You don't need to be everything to everyone. You don't need to meet every expectation. What you need is space. Space to feel again. Space to remember what matters. Space to be human. And in that space, healing begins. In that stillness, something old falls away and something new begins to emerge. Not a version of you that is perfect or invincible, but a version of you that is whole, grounded, and alive. When you give yourself permission to rest, you begin to find your way back. Not to who you were, but to who you are becoming. And that person is not someone who quit. That person is someone who finally learned how to listen. Disappointment is something that comes quietly but hits deeply. It doesn't always arrive with chaos or loudness. It slips into your life through the cracks of expectations, dreams, and silent hopes. You don't plan for it. You don't expect it. And when it happens, it doesn't just affect your mind. It reaches into the core of who you are. The moments you believed would bring you happiness instead left you feeling hollow. The people you trusted didn't show up when you needed them. The plans you built with care slowly fell apart, and what you were left with was not failure, it was disappointment. The kind that lingers. The kind that doesn't leave easily. The kind that can shape the way you see yourself and the world around you. But what people rarely tell you is that disappointment is not a sign of weakness. It is not a signal that you should stop trying or that you are less than others. It is simply proof that you cared, that you loved, that you tried, that you invested yourself in something or someone with genuine effort. And when it didn't work out the way you imagined, of course it hurt. That pain is natural. That sting is part of being human. The depth of your disappointment only reflects the depth of your sincerity. In fact, only those who feel deeply can be disappointed deeply. That means you are not numb. It means your heart is alive. And being human means we will be let down sometimes. Not because life is cruel, but because life is uncertain. People make mistakes. Circumstances shift. And even the most carefully made plans can collapse without warning. That doesn't mean you were foolish to hope. It means you were brave enough to believe. And belief always carries risk. It carries the risk of pain, yes, but also the possibility of growth. The pain of disappointment is a crossroads. Can lead to bitterness or to wisdom. Can close you off or it can open something new in you. There is a unique kind of strength in allowing yourself to feel the weight of your disappointment without letting it harden you. You can grieve the things that didn't happen. You can cry for what was lost. But you don't have to lose yourself in that sadness. Because underneath the ache, there is still life. There is still something within you that remains untouched by the failure. And that part of you, the untouched part, is the part that keeps going. You may feel like hiding, like isolating yourself from the world that let you down. You may start to believe that you don't belong anywhere, that maybe you're not meant to find peace or happiness. But these are not truths. These are the voices of exhaustion speaking. They rise up when the heart has been wounded, and they sound convincing. But you must remember that these feelings, as heavy as they are, do not define who you are. They are temporary guests, not permanent residents. Disappointment is part of every meaningful journey. Every person who has grown, changed, and awakened has walked through it. They've felt the sting of things not going as planned. They've doubted themselves. They've lost hope. But they've also discovered something else. Something quiet but powerful. The ability to continue. The choice to feel it all and still rise. To not let the pain rewrite their story, but to let it inform the next chapter with greater clarity and depth. It's easy to look at others and think they have it all together. But beneath their smiles, there are disappointments too. Everyone has faced moments where their heart sank. The difference is not in whether or not you get hurt, it's in how you respond afterward. It's in whether or not you choose to stay open, to keep showing up, to keep believing in the possibility of something better, even after everything seemed to fall apart. You don't have to pretend you're okay when you're not. You don't have to mask your pain with forced positivity. The truth is, healing begins with honesty. And honesty says, I'm disappointed, I'm hurting, but I am still here, I am still breathing, and I am not going to disappear just because something didn't work out. Your presence, in spite of your disappointment, is powerful, it's meaningful, and it's a quiet declaration that you will not let this world harden your heart. You will not stop feeling, even when it hurts, because that feeling is what makes you alive, is what makes you real, and that realness is where your strength lives. Sometimes the most painful thing is not what happens to you, but the silence that follows. The kind of silence where no one notices your struggle, where your cries are quiet and your pain becomes invisible. You move through your days like a shadow, performing duties, offering smiles, nodding your head when spoken to. All the while something inside you is slowly fading. You begin to wonder if anyone truly sees you, not the version of you that plays the part, but the one beneath it all, the one that aches, that longs, that breaks in the quiet moments. And when you feel unseen for too long, it becomes easy to believe that your life doesn't matter, that your presence makes no difference, that maybe the world would go on just the same if you disappeared. But that belief is a lie born from isolation, not from truth. The truth is that even when no one seems to notice, your life has been leaving traces. Every time you offered kindness, even when your own heart was breaking, it mattered. Every time you stayed strong for someone else, even when you were tired, it counted. Every time you chose not to give up, even in silence, it made a difference. Just because the world didn't stop to applaud doesn't mean it wasn't meaningful. You are not invisible because no one says your name. You are not worthless because you haven't been celebrated. You exist, and your existence alone has touched lives in ways you may never fully realize. There are people who have felt less alone because of a conversation you had, a smile you gave, a moment of understanding you offered. There are lives you've influenced just by being who you are, simply by showing up in the spaces you occupy. You don't need to be loud to be powerful. You don't need to be famous to be important. And you don't need to be surrounded by praise to be valuable. Real impact often goes unrecognized. True strength is often quiet. The most sincere forms of love and care are not always loud. They are steady, consistent, and quietly transformational.